Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 2022 meeting of the Lower Makefield Township Historical Commission. There's actually four of us on right now. We're waiting for probably one other member to join, and hopefully also our liaison, Dan Grenier, will be joining us tonight. We have just a few items on our agenda. I thought what we would do to start with was just kind of going through a list of action items and getting an update on where we are. And then there was an issue around the master plan for Patterson Farm. Wanted to talk a little bit around that. Hey, Chris, welcome. And then just a couple on new businesses, whether we should be applying for a archival grant, and then how we want to handle our July meeting. So hopefully we can get through this in about an hour tonight, okay? So what I'm going to do to start is, first of all, let me ask, when it comes to the minutes for May 2022, were there any comments on the minutes as distributed? Helen, James, no? If not, may I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Yay.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chris, for taking that. I appreciate that. Okay, so in terms of looking at the just kind of some of our action items, they're on that first page. I'll go through them. So one of the action items we had was with regards to the SHPO is actually doing a survey of the area, and they asked us to put in things that we wanted them to make sure that they hit. So they talked about things that either were important to underrepresented communities or had other historical significance. And last time we agreed that we would put in three properties. One is the Octagonal Schoolhouse site, the Quarry Road Graveyard, and Edge Hill Gardens. So I put all of that into the Survey Monkey that they had, and identified myself as a contact should they have any questions, and I haven't heard back from them. So I'll let you know. I know that Jim also got a message. Jim Majewski got a message around this, and he forwarded to me also. So so it's good that they're also in contact with the people in the township. So we'll keep you updated if we hear anything more about that. The second action item that we had from last week was around our funding priorities. And this was in terms of giving to Supervisor Grenier a list of funding priorities that could either be put into this year's budget or potentially for next year. And we identified three topics there again. One was the repair of the stone wall at Slate Hill Cemetery. And Helen had done some background work already in terms of what it would cost for materials for that. So we put that in, sent that to Dan. The second was the phase 1 archaeological survey at Patterson Farm. And that supports the National Register submission. And with Jim Majewski's help, we got some transparency into the archaeological study that was done at Pricker Preserve. So we used $20,000 as a budgetary item for that. And then the third was the acquisition of the Octagonal Schoolhouse on Oxford Valley Road and the development of a site interpretation plan. And we put, some $5,000 for the acquisition cost, $5,000 for plan development in there. If Dan gets on, we can kind of ask where that stands. I did participate or listen to the May 31st meeting. They didn't actually discuss it there. I know there was another second meeting. I believe it was last week when I was away. I wasn't sure if they were discussed at that meeting. I don't know, Helen, did you have a chance? Did you watch those special meetings of the board? Anyone? No? Okay, we'll find out from Dan. The third topic actually was to clarify with Jim Majewski how the Trillio project was to go forward, and if there was going to be another review of the updated plan by the HARB or the Zone Review Board. And I copied Jim's response actually into the minutes, but it doesn't look like we will be officially engaged in other proposals. They took our feedback, and I guess what's going to happen is that they're going to go right to the Zone Review Board. So we do have some issues and concerns, and we put those into the minutes for the last meeting. So what I will do is when that issue comes to the Zone Review Board, I could either send a letter to the zone review board or participate in that meeting, and make public comment, or both of those, in order to make sure that our concerns are heard. Did anybody have a chance to see what Jim actually put in there and have any questions on the process going forward?
No, I did not.
Okay,
So what he basically talks about is they're going to the zone review board in order to get a variance on what is in the overlay for the historical district. But then if you look at the last paragraph, what Jim says, if they are granted a variance, then they would need to go through the land development process, and the historical commission would have an opportunity to provide input. And he gives us an outline of what that process looks like. So this first step of what they're going through is just to get the variance. Then when they go through the variance, they need to go through another approval process, and that's where we would have the opportunity to actually provide more input. Okay, if we have any questions on this, I'm happy to get back and maybe even have Jim come into one of our meetings and kind of go through what that process looks like.
Joe, can you say that a little louder?
I said, if we have any questions on this, I would be glad to have Jim attend one of our meetings and kind of walk through what does this process look like, because right now he's going through the process that they have to get a variance, but then there's a process that follows on before they're able to actually start construction. And again, I guess for us, there's a number of issues, but probably the biggest issue is the deconstruction of the Quill House, right? That we feel that that's just losing even additional historic fabric in the district, and would like that not to happen. So. Okay, number D was the dendrochronology project at Patterson Farm. And we had a really good discussion on that. And there's also a discussion on that at the May 31st Board of Supervisors meeting. And what essentially, and we'll talk about the Board of Supervisors meeting a little bit more when we talk about the master plan, right? But one of the things they were talking about was putting funds aside for a master plan for Patterson Farm. And there was a question of whether this would be included in that or not. And towards the end of the meeting, Supervisor Weiss commented that he thought that what the township needed to provide was the approval, but that the Patterson Farm Preservation was going to provide the funding. And the last time that we met on this, Helen, you had said that you were in contact with the Daughters for the American Revolution.
Yes.
Who offered to pay for that. So do you have any update on that?
Absolutely. Well, nothing has been coming from their direction, that's for sure. Big silence, basically, I'm sure they were a little shocked when I gave them that proposal. That said, a conversation with Patterson Farm Preservation Group said they would be interested, but they have now retained John Van Leuveney to kind of argue for them with the township office. So that puts them in kind of an awkward position. So at this point, I think, what you wrote in the opinion makes sense to basically just put a plan forward to the supervisors and say, this is approximately what it's going to cost. And it's between $5,000 and $7,000, depending on which vendor we go with. But my recommendation would be to plan for dendrochronology for five different pulls of wood. One from the wagon shed, two from the Tuncleave Tavern, or Tuncleave Cabin. What did I say that? Tuncleave Cabin. One from the Patterson Barn, which is now, having read the ad hoc committee report, I'm very concerned about them not valuing the age of that, as well as the Satterthwaite Barn. So the guy seems very, at least if we go with Makefield, seems very confident about picking the oldest timber in the place. And we could not get in either the Patterson barn or the Satterthwaite barn. They were both screwed closed. So I had a little conversation with Dan last week about this, and he said, well, he's going to demand that he gets a tour of both barns before any master plan goes forward or anything. Now, he doesn't have the votes in the Board of Supervisors. But basically, when I look at it, the first thing was to do to identify the plan, the sites, and then how it will be useful to the township. And basically, I have to say any report from a dendrochronologist, no matter whether it attacks our arguments or not, is science that is useful for dating at least parts of these structures, and therefore will help with the National Register application, which is our goal. So if I can do anything on that, that is what I suggest that we immediately submit to the township supervisors for their consideration. A plan for $5,000 to $7,000 to be spent immediately on doing the dendrochronology before any master plan. Because if you don't know how, any kind of idea of how old the structures are, planning for it is just guessing.
Right.
So that's
Well, yes, no,
that's
I mean,
my report. I'll be
I
happy
guess-
to write that up, Joe, if you want me to put up this plan as a submission to the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, as far as I can see right now, the question is around funding of it. It wasn't that there wasn't support for doing it. There is support for doing it. The question is who's going to pay for it, and
as far as I know, the ceiling for must be RFP is $19,000.
there's 19,000, right?
So I think that's why I'm pretty confident for 5 to 7, he will be able to pull 5 to 6 good samples, send them off to the lab, and at least we'll have that.
So then the Daughters of the American Revolution then are not interested in funding it.
They have not replied at all. I've sent 2 emails. So at this point, either they're not meeting or they're just shocked that we asked for that much, and perhaps they'll come back and contribute a lesser amount to some other project. So I'll just keep the door open. I'll tell them that we are moving forward to get the supervisors and possibly Patterson Farm to put in some cash, but we're basically moving forward to get it done. Because otherwise, I just really feel like we're just spinning our wheels here. We're just not getting, it's been another year going by. The house is still sitting there rotting. I don't know how you feel, Tom, but and James, but it's just so bloody frustrating dealing with bureaucracies.
Yeah, the only thing, I remember sitting there and hearing Donna Jones say that they had the money to fund a dendrochronology study and they just needed the approval, right? So it's a little, I don't know, it seems like
That's
the
what I
Board of
understood.
Supervisors is being a little blindsided by the fact that they might need money for it.
Yeah, I think James. I think that was what I heard also at the meeting where the ad hoc committee presented their results. Was that Patterson?
So I will make a motion if that matters, that we accept that plan for dendrochronology and submit it to the Board of Supervisors.
Hold on. The last time we met, Helen, I thought you said that Mark Cuba had indicated that getting a accurate dendrochronology was not likely. Is that true?
He had said from the Satterthwaite house, yes. But the other structures, he thought the Tunkley cabin was possible. He said it was iffy, and he said if he couldn't pull it, he would not charge for it. So at that,
I'm sorry. And did you see my email from my conversation?
Yeah, from the other guy
with Mike Worthington? And my impression now is that, okay, so let me explain to everybody here. This concept of dating structures by dendrochronology started in Oxford, England a while back. It was started by a man by the name of Mike Worthington, who subsequently moved his operation to the US. And Mark Cuba was left behind to deal with the library that they had set up in Oxford, England. I literally stumbled upon Mike Worthington and his group, which is called Oxford Dendrochronology. They're based out of Maryland, here in the US, and had a conversation with him to help me understand a couple of things. One, what is the relevance of a dendrochronology library that exists in the UK when you're trying to date buildings in the US? What kinds of trees can you and can you not date, and what are the considerations? And the first thing he said to me was, yes, it makes absolutely no sense to be using a library in the UK to try and date structures in the US. And he does not use that library. He uses his own library, which has hundreds of thousands of samples that he's taken all along the Middle Eastern states of the United States in the US. He did say that there are some trees that are more difficult to date than others.
Whoops, you got muted. Somehow got muted, Tom.
Tom, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. I believe he said that
The trees we were talking about were all good for him too.
he said the only tree he can't date is chestnut. He said
Yeah.
poplar and pine have challenges, but he knows how to deal with that.
Yeah,
So
and
my point is that I
which
think
guy do we want to go with?
well,
I mean,
yeah.
really,
So I mean, I think it makes sense at least to get a proposal from Mike Worthington. He sounds like his approach to this makes a lot more sense than what I've heard out of Mark Cuba.
Cuba,
And,
Cuba,
you know,
Cuba. I agree.
if we're going to do this,
Yeah, let's do it.
we need to do it right, and we need to make sure that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's. And my proposal here is that we don't commit to any group or any laboratory until we've got a proposal from Mike Worthington.
Okay, I agree with that. That's fine.
Okay.
No, I agree with you. I mean, to me, it obviously appeared as though it was an academic, pardon the French, pissing match as to who was the better person. They knew of each other. They had worked together in Oxford and then had a split of some sort. And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I really don't know. I tried to talk to my archaeologist friend about it, and she said they use both of them. So, I don't know. But if you feel more comfortable, Tom, you're the scientist. I would absolutely bow to your. Can you get that from him? That's why I left it 5 to 7, because Cuba was about 5, and
Yeah.
I thought, from what I gathered, he was a little more expensive because of the travel involved.
Yeah. So my last conversation with him, which was in about the middle of May, he was headed off to Spain for a couple of weeks, so he should be back now.
Okay.
And I'll reach out to him again then and see if we can get something going here. If you look on his website, he actually shows you where all the buildings are that he has.
Yeah, I did. I saw that.
Successfully dated, and there's dozens and dozens of them, and they're all in this area. So I think his library is going to be very relevant to the things that we're trying to accomplish here. But I'll get.
Helen, Mark Cuba, he came out and spent some time, with you going through the sites. Has he given us an updated proposal following his visit?
I missed the last part of that.
Has he given us an updated proposal following his visit to Patterson Farm? Mark
No,
Cuba.
he was pretty set with what he had told me at when we were on the visit. He said that it was in those guidelines. So yes, that was basically, if he couldn't pull anything, he wouldn't charge anything. But if he could pull stuff, he would suggest those 5, and it would be about $5,000.
Those numbers seem low compared to the proposal that Donna sent us. That's why I'm asking. I have to go back and look at that again. What was in there? Because I thought he was talking like over 8. And all right. Why don't we, so Tom, why don't you please follow up with Worthington for that? And Ellen, if you're in touch with Mark Cuba, if you could just ask him to give us an updated proposal then post
Okay.
Patterson Farm. Like you said,
Yeah, and then we'll
list
pick
the
the,
buildings, the number of samples at each building, and then what would be the cost?
yeah, I had decided 5 samples.
One at each building? One on each building, because you said you named 5 buildings.
Two on the Tuncleve cabin. Mark Cuba had mentioned that he would prefer to take one from the attic timbers as well.
Right.
You know, the joists in the attic, and we could not get into it. So that was the other place that we needed to get into. He said one good one from the basement would be enough. So,
Okay.
because they all looked about the same age and installation about the same time. So he was confident about they basically have bark edge. I mean, so he was confident about taking, and I think I would trust him on that, you know, picking the timbers. He identified tulip which is poplar in the wagon shed, but also a nice big oak log that's in there as well. It looked like it was, had been there a long time. And then, as I said, a main timber from the Satterthwaite barn and a main timber from the Patterson barn. Timbers that don't look like they have been removed from someplace else and used over, which usually have different kinds of cuts and joints, and you can tell when a timber's been reused as to when it's original place.
All right. So if we just confirm that, and then we'll have 2 proposals that we can look at.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'd like to still get this passed that we're going to do it. And then we can say we will, at the end of this plan, I'll say we will seek it at least two bids.
So what would your motion be?
My motion is to create a plan for the supervisors for the dendrochronology for 5 sites because of the impact it will have on the National Register nomination and planning for a master plan for the farm. And then say we will seek at least 2 different bids for this job. And not necessarily going to pick the one with the cheaper bid, but we as a group will decide which group we're going to use. How's that?
Okay. So that's a motion?
Yes.
Any questions, seconds? Tom, are you questioning or seconding? Can't hear you.
I'm seconding.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Motion passed. Thank you, Helen. I'd like to skip down to number G because it pertains to some of one of the topics I want to discuss tonight. And Chris, we had been talking about looking at the information that is stored at the township building, and you and Helen and I went over. We did a physical inspection, but there was some electronic media that Jim Majewski had given you. Have you had a chance to get a sense of what's on that disk drive or on the Google Drive?
I haven't been through the Google Drive. I've been through the hard drive. There is candidly not very much there. There's some old notes from the Historic Commission. There's a bunch of scanned documents, several of which we saw in hard copy at the township building. But I need to go through the Google Drive still. That's still pending. I also thought on that drive he had given us a copy of Past Perfect. Because he gave me all the manuals for it. So I have like a big stack of Past Perfect manuals, but there was no software on the drive either. So, and I didn't realize that until the end of last week when I sat down to go through everything. So I need to bring that back to him to just get an understanding of how to access the software so we can move forward with that.
He had it on one of the laptops. So in an email, we were emailing something else. I think he said that they were able to get, apparently they've had some computer issues, right? But they were able to get that resolved and get some extra laptops. So he may have freed that one up so he can give that to us now. So just send him a message, copy me, and we'll see where he is on that. On Past Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
Let's skip down. So ongoing business. Let's talk a little bit about the Patterson Farm Master Plan. So there was a meeting on May 31st, a special meeting of the Board of Supervisors. And the purpose of the meeting was to discuss how to go forward with the sewer proceeds. They actually had a meeting then, and as I mentioned, there was another meeting last week around the same topic. But the 31st meeting was pretty much dominated by the discussion of the master plan at Patterson Farm. So in my recollection, in my notes, two major things came out of that. One is that they put aside $300,000 for the development of a master plan. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means, right, for Patterson Farm. That was one. And the second thing was they authorized or enabled the ad hoc committee to continue with their work and lead the development of that master plan. Now, I think what was a little bit muddled in the discussion was what's the master plan, because I think a lot of people had a different impression around what would be in there. And my impression of a master plan, when you look at a master plan for something like Patterson Farm, it's not obviously the farmland because that's already addressed. It's more the buildings that are at the farmstead. What do you do with those buildings? What are potential uses for those buildings, and what needs to be done in order to see that through? But there was a lot of discussion around, lead abatement and other environmental conditions. There was a discussion around some of the engineering for some of the buildings, and none of those, in my opinion, really come into a master plan because they all depend upon the first topic, which is what are you going to do with the buildings? Once you decide that, you can go forward. Anyway, Dennis Stedman is now taking up the charge with the ad hoc committee. One of the first things he's going to do is get some clarity around the scope and the timing for that master plan. Did anybody else have a chance to watch that meeting or have the opinion about what happened there? Did you see that, Helen? Helen?
Yes, I'm just unmuting, trying to unmute.
Yeah.
I watched both of them. Very disturbing in a lot of levels, and particularly the fighting among the supervisors themselves was very disturbing. That said, I also, after watching it, I tried to grab my copy of the ad hoc committee report, and I cannot find it. I found my report from the Historic Commission, but that said, basically an addendum at the end. And so I went down and grabbed my husband's computer and read it on his computer because he was sent officially the ad hoc committee's report as chairman of the HARB. And I was just pulling my hair out as I was reading it because everything that I wrote in the historic part was not melded into the ad hoc committee report. So a lot of the structures were described, were dated far later than they were dated, from what I can see in the deeds. And it was just very disturbing to see that there was kind of not that carry through. And then that kind of bled into the discussions that the supervisors were having about the buildings and potential uses, including the fact that AOY immediately put in to use the pack house for a photographic enterprise that's going to net them like $40,000 or something this fall to take pictures of families inside the pack house in little sort of what I gathered tableau set up where you could have a Santa figure or whatever you wanted, a Jewish menorah, and take pictures inside this house, but with photographers chosen by them. It just seemed very bizarre, but they got that got passed through, and that's actually going to happen apparently. The Patterson Farm Group had previously warned that the pack house should not be used because of the spilled diesel on the soil, on the ground of the concrete and also because of the asbestos in the ceiling fixtures. I have no idea whether that's been mitigated, but I kind of doubt it. it just seemed to me that things are now happening ad hoc all over that farm and without much safety considerations, parking considerations, and our suggestions that the farmer be consulted first were not done. He's been told after the fact that this is happening, and apparently from, this is hearsay, but apparently not very happy about it because he's concerned that if he complains, they're going to kick him out. So that's, same old problem. And then with the barns nailed shut, he's concerned about, that. Who knows? At this point, we're anticipating a new township manager on the 1st of July, or at least an interim manager taking over. So all bets are off as to what's going to be happening. That's my impression from that committee meeting.
James, your comment on the ad hoc committee report not accurately reflecting what the historical commission submitted.
Yeah, there were several. I need to get it back from my husband. I asked my husband to send it to me.
It's been published publicly
Online.
online for like
Oh,
literally
yeah.
months. So
Right.
I just typed in on Google.
I tried to
LMT
find it. I
ad
could
hoc
not find
committee report. I literally
Okay.
just typed in ad hoc committee report LMT on Google. It's the first result. I sent this to you guys. The dates look fine. It's Joseph Yardley House, 1731, Satterthwaite, 1830, maybe 1730. This is pretty
That's
much
not right.
copy and pasted from what was sent and plus the Historic Commission report is included as an addendum to the actual report anyway, word for word. So it's all there. But yeah, and it's been available online, and I'm pretty sure I sent this to the committee as well.
I tried looking for it online. I could not find it. I could find my report to the ad hoc committee from the commission, historic report, but I couldn't find the final report.
Well, if you go to the township website under committee.
I did. That's where I looked.
There's an ad hoc.
It's not there.
Okay. You just
I think it's been posted under the news section. Back in March.
Well, there's
here. I'll send you the link now.
Okay.
But
well, basically the HARB is at this point being asked to comment on it. So that was interesting to me, that basically the report is still not finalized, or that they're asking for feedback on the report still.
The HARB is
yeah, I think one of the issues was that the budget process has taken up a lot of the time of the Board of Supervisors. So we initially presented our findings back in March, but really not much has happened on it until this past meeting.
So the money is been authorized. And I guess it's just up now to get the ad hoc committee to put Dennis will be publishing a plan going forward with regards to the timing and steps and things like that for development. And again, I guess, hopefully the first thing he looks at is just outlining the scope, because I think there's just different expectations from different people on the board in terms of what they want to see in that plan.
What I'll do is, when I get it, I will just start making comments, basically the way I do when I'm editing papers. And, if they want to, I'll send it to you, Joe. Okay. So I'll edit what comments jumped out of me and, get back to you on that. I also did find today, because I was doing this today, of course, looking for this report, because I had read Steve's, but then I couldn't remember what comments I had made. So I was looking through my papers and found the original submission that I think you sent me in January for the National Register, which I had never seen before, with the feedback attached, and I don't know whether you sent it or Jim sent it.
I,
That was really interesting, and I think I sent it to Tom. Is that the one I sent to you from January, Tom?
I don't recall, Helen.
Okay. The original, it was the original submission for the Satterthwaite half, and it's called the Joseph Satterthwaite House at that point.
No, I don't recall that, Helen, sorry.
Okay. Well, I'll
It
send
may
it.
have may have ended up in the ether with a lot of the correspondence between you and I.
Yeah, I'll resend it to you.
so as far as I remember, there is two documents. There is a Patterson Farm submission to the National Register. And then
Yeah, and Jim said the other one didn't exist, and I found it. So I know, and it
But
was
it
dated
is-
from 2007.
right. And I wasn't sure if that was a submission or it was just a document that was written to the PA SHPO.
I don't know if it was ever submitted. I mean, I just have the document from Kimberly,
Yeah,
who I
exactly.
worked with at the Conservancy.
Right. So there's both of those. James, did I miss anything on the ad hoc committee and that in the master plan? So, I mean, there'll be regular meetings. I'm assuming that Dennis will schedule additional meetings and we can watch those meetings and comment as necessary, correct?
Yeah, that's the sense I'm getting from it. Though I am going to have to be, I'm going to have to leave the committee probably at this stage, because, yeah, I expect to probably move out of the township in September. But and it just seems like I think Joe, you might have been copied on the email, but
Right. Yeah.
that but yeah, Dennis thinks it's probably the best idea as they're moving between these stages, for me to leave now.
Yeah. Okay. I think Dennis asked all the members of the ad hoc committee if their time would allow them to continue to the next phase, because their commitment was obviously for that first piece. So he'll be restaffing the committee going forward. New business, 2 topics. One is there is an opportunity for a grant from the Historical and Archival Records Care Grant, HARC grant. And I thought that this could be useful for the project that Chris and Helen and I have been discussing, which is largely how do we take all the stuff sitting at the township building and digitize it and get it online and make it available to people. So it's not a lot of money though, right? I think it was $5,000 if we do it just as the township. If we had a partner organization go in with us, we could double that. Although I'm not sure which partner organization we could do that with. Did anybody have a chance to look at that grant announcement that I highlighted there? And is it something that you think we should do? The deadline, I believe, is the end of July or August 1st. I think it's August 1st. We have to get it done by.
So Joe, I think you just apply for it, and the issue is going to be on the other end. Will they allow us to get access to the things?
But what would be the scope of a $5,000 project for the grant? That's, I mean, right now like the last time our discussion, we know what we have. Chris has gone through some of the electronic stuff, right? But if you're going to put something digitized and put it into past perfect, you need to have some type of a formula, or a kind of a schema that you're going to use with keywords and all of that. None of us, well, Helen, you're an archivist, but none of the rest of us are archivists, right?
Yeah. So basically, you have to assess what's there, and that will pay for that. So you basically have to go in. It's like the way my son number 2 cleans his room. Everything gets put into a pile in the middle of the floor, and then you sort it by date and importance, and you basically get rid of the things that are no longer valid, but keep the things that are interesting. And it's a real guesswork tied up the thing, but it's a basic beginning for archival practice. And what you needs to be preserved gets put in folders and stuck in at least archival boxes. so that at some point it can be taken out and copied or, accessed in some way. But somebody has to write up a description of it, what exactly there is and where it is, and where it's been stored, and then and basically trash all the copies of the copies of the copies that we have currently in the filing system in the township, which is a mess. And I have no idea where the other stuff is. I understand there's a warehouse someplace that has stuff from the 50s and 60s. Jim put up, I think this week, it was a plan or a yearly report from the Board of Supervisors from 1960.
Yep.
And like the yearly budget was $18,000. It was crazy to see something like that. But how neat to see how little this township was run on to begin with and where we are today. It's just insanity. But I'm glad somebody saved that little piece of paper. It was a 2-page report and it listed all the supervisors, the various committees. A lot of people served 2 different roles. It was just amazing. But our township ran very successfully on very little, but that was before Toll Brothers had hit and, all kinds of other things had happened. And so something like that, it deserves to be saved, so, but basically someone comes in and does that. And I would think we could get probably 2 students from Buck's preservation course to come in and do that, Joe, with a little bit of mentoring from us.
The grant does cover supplies, it covers digitization, it covers indexing. So there is a world here to build that project. I'm happy to spend some time with Jim and put something together for you guys to review and comment on in the next couple, certainly before the next meeting, so that we can make that deadline. I think this was in scope for this project when I volunteered for it a couple of months ago. So I'd love to see it through.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's also only up to 5,000, right? It doesn't have to be the full 5,000.
Yeah.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
Paper, the supplies are going to cost that much.
Yeah. What supplies?
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
supplies?
What supply?
The archival boxes and the other things you may need if you're going to
Folders,
store
yeah.
and not digitize.
Right. And this is just one of the groups. I mean, I think you can also apply for grants through the SHPO too. This is a different part of the government. So I think it's worthwhile, Chris, because if the grant doesn't get accepted here, we could actually look at other opportunities to submit it.
Then we put it in the budget for next year.
And we put it in the budget for next year, right? So, Chris, you'll try to draft something around that?
Yep, I'm on it.
Okay, thanks. And do you need any, as far as getting the support from people at Bucks, do you need any help with the contacts there?
I'm going to start with Jim and I'm going to CC you, and hopefully as that goes, you can help me navigate if anything feels or seems rocky. Does that make sense?
All right, good. And the last topic we had was our July and August meetings. And I think it's been tradition that we don't have an August meeting because of vacations. So, I think we could, unless something urgent comes up, we can skip that. In terms of a July meeting though, Helen, you're not going to be available, right? You're going to be out.
No, actually, I'll just do what James is doing. Just get on the computer. What time is it there, James?
It's 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be, most likely at a private house. So if it has Wi-Fi, I will get on. If not, you'll know I didn't have Wi-Fi.
I'm looking at the agenda. The 20th is a Board of Supervisors meeting, so we would not be able to use, if we stuck to our normal time, we would not be able to use this. We could do it on the
week before?
Yeah, the 13th of July. Okay.
That works for me.
All right. In fact, I think it's already there. So I'll just let Katie know we're going to do it on July 13th. And then we'll have a hopefully something, Chris, you'll have a draft up for us to look at. We can discuss the grant, and maybe we'll have the proposals also for the dendrochronology projects for us to go through.
And we can vote on that at that point. That would be great.
Yeah, and then we can vote.
And hopefully we'll have go ahead from the supervisors so that we can then award the contract right away.
Right, okay, good. Are there any other topics, or is there any public comment? No public comment? Any other topics from the commission? All right, well, everyone, thank you very much for attending tonight, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Great. Good job, Joe. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.